Well, here's a concept from lesson 60. It's asking us to find the measure of EF. Notice it is a multi-step problem. Find the measure of EF in the compound figure. So certainly we're going to need to find some other information before we're able to go straight to EF. I will point out to you that a couple things that we should be able to see here. If this is a right angle, that means this is a right angle as well, which means that if we could figure out what this leg right here is using the Pythagorean theorem on this triangle, we would have a leg here, and if we could find this little leg here, the short leg, we would have enough to use the Pythagorean theorem and find the measure of EF. So I'm going to suggest that we start by trying to find the measure of this little leg right here. Do you recall that if you have parallel lines, then the segments that are created by the transversal, and that is, here's the transversal, we have this as a transversal and this as a transversal between these three parallel lines, those are proportional. We already know that this little piece here is 4, we know this is 5, and this is 7, so let's set up a proportion. We can say 7 is to 5 as our unknown, let me call this x, x is to 4. So that means we have 28 is equal to 5x. That leaves us with x equaling 28 over 5. All right, so if x is equal to 28 over 5, that's good to know, right? Let me just write that in here. We'll call this 28 over 5. I'm just leaving that as an improper fraction. Well, is that helpful? It's reasonably helpful, actually, because do you see that we know this measurement has to equal 8, right? Because if this is 4 and this is 4, that means that the whole thing is equal to 8. So we could say 8 squared plus, I'm going to call this y, plus y squared is equal to 20 squared. So we can solve for y squared. We know that y squared is going to equal 400 minus 64. Do you see how I brought this over here, right? Okay, so 400 minus 64 is going to give us 336. So we have y squared equals 336. If we take the square root of both sides, that'll give us the square root of 336, which is approximately 18.33. Okay? So I'm going to say approximately 18.33. So that's the measure of y. Now, notice that I'm going to, I'll put a y here so that we can see that that's what we decided. We decided this is 18.33. All right, now we're good to go, aren't we? Do you see that we have this long leg here that we called y? We have the short leg that we called x. We can use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to use the square root of 336 because then I haven't rounded anything, right? So the square root of 336 squared, right, plus 28 over 5 squared equals EF squared. So the square root of anything squared is itself, so this is 336 plus, I'm going to let you figure out what 28 over 5 squared is. 28 over 5 squared equals EF squared. And then if you take all of this put all of this into your calculator and then take the square root of that so that you can find just the measure of EF, you should end up with, I'm thinking for this part, you should end up with 367.36 approximately, and then when you take the square root, you should end up with 19.2 equaling EF. Okay? Hope all of that makes sense. Multi-step. The key is figure out what you know, figure out what you need to know, and then start solving.